in an interrogation room where an FBI agent interrogates 3 criminals, Kevin, Flemmy, and Martirano, from the same criminal gang Winter Hill. He asks them if they are ready to tell everything about their former boss James Whitey Bulger and his alliance with an FBI agent, John Connolly. After their confirmation, the interrogation begins, and Kevin begins telling the story. The scene shifts to 1971, when Kevin's career starts as a guard for Whitey, a well-known criminal in Boston and an ex-convict. One night, Kevin is on guard outside a bar where Whitey is having fun with his gang members, Flemmy and Martirano. Suddenly, a person named Charlie arrives with his group, and he claims to be a close relative of Whitey, but Kevin doesn't let him enter for security purposes. Charlie insists, but Kevin asks him to leave, and this leads to a fight between the two. Upon hearing about the situation outside, Whitey arrives and stops the fight, and Kevin learns that Charlie is really a relative of Whitey. Whitey takes Charlie inside, whereas poor Kevin bleeds due to fulfilling his duty. The next day, Whitey, along with a member of the rival Italian gang, Angiulo, takes Kevin to a specific point where Kevin thinks Whitey is going to kill him because of the last night's incident. However, Whitey starts beating Angiulo's gang member and asks Kevin to participate too. Whitey saw some potential in Kevin, and that's why he has started trusting him for the way he stood firm in front of everyone. Whitey, who is known to be a kind person in his neighborhood, has a brother named Billy, who is the state senator. Both brothers grew up with John Connolly, who is now an FBI agent and is assigned to eradicate the Italian mafia from Boston. For this, he asks Billy to request Whitey, so he becomes their snitch against the Italian gang's boss, Angiulo, as this will benefit both of them. The FBI will arrest Angiulo, the biggest rival to Whitey, and in this process, Whitey will get complete security, and no charge will be put against him. Billy initially refuses Connolly's request, but when he reaches home, he talks to Whitey about his meeting with the FBI agent. Whitey eventually meets Connolly and gives him 2 minutes to justify why he should be an ally to the FBI. Connolly tells him that Angiulo is planning to kill Whitey and an alliance with the FBI will be beneficial for him. Whitey tells him that he hates being an informant, and Connolly rejects this idea as he thinks Whitey is not an informant to him but an ally. Whitey doesn't accept his offer and arrives at his home to meet his wife and son. The next morning, at the breakfast table, Whitey's son tells him that he punched one of his classmates because he was messing with him but got in trouble for doing so. To this, Whitey appreciates his courageous move but then teaches him to seek revenge from others in private, not in public. If nobody saw it, it never happened. After that, he leaves to meet his gang members. As Whitey is in his car with his gang, a cop stops and threatens him, also tells him that he works for Angiulo. One of the gang members, Tommy, gets infuriated and asks the officer to leave as soon as possible. Later that night, in the bar, Tommy, who is drunk, tells the group that he will kill the cop who threatened Whitey. However, Whitey asks him to keep calm and orders him not to kill any cop, enraging Tommy. Tommy calls out Whitey in front of everyone, and the other members try to stop him, but he keeps moving forward to attack Whitey. Fortunately, the group members succeed in stopping him, and Whitey tells Tommy to watch his attitude toward his boss. The next day, an Angiulo gang member kills one of Whitey's colleagues, Mickey, and when Whitey comes to know about this, he takes Martirano and Flemmy with him to meet Tommy. Tommy seeks forgiveness for his attitude from the last night, and Whitey acts like he is not bothered at all. He tells him that it's not a big deal, but suddenly Martirano shoots Tommy in the head. According to Kevin, who is being interrogated, Whitey did this thinking that Tommy might have ratted out Mickey to Angiulo, or maybe Tommy's ill behavior was the sole reason behind his death. Tommy was then buried near a river, a place which was known as Bulger Burial Ground. After Mickey's death, Whitey's desire to seek revenge from the Angiulo escalates, so he contacts Connolly and allies with him. The very next day, Connolly meets the senior officers McGuire and Robert and tries to convince them to ally with Whitey. However, McGuire says that the FBI is not so desperate that it would ally with an ex-convict and a criminal who has committed nearly every crime. To this, Connolly tells them that's what makes him the most influential in the criminal groups, as Whitey must have information on other gangs too. That's why he can help the FBI to find their target, Angiulo, and eliminate the Italian mafia. McGuire asks Mr. Morris' opinion about the situation, and he suggests that allying with Whitey can benefit them. Consequently, all the officers agree on Connolly's request, but one condition is that Whitey won't be involved in drugs and murders. Connolly then tells Whitey about this condition, and he agrees to do this business with the FBI and informs Flemmy about this, who is shocked. On Christmas, Whitey comes to know that his son has been admitted to the hospital and is suffering from Reye's syndrome. His wife tells him that their son is on life support and soon his brain will be completely damaged. Whitey is devastated to learn this, and his wife also tells him that she can't see their son like this, so she will be the one to disconnect their son from life support. To this, Whitey becomes angry and scolds her for being so cold, but she tells Whitey, who himself takes the lives of many, not to call her cold. Whitey's son soon dies, and his connection with his wife also gets broken. During the interrogation, the FBI officer asks Flemmy to tell him the details of the time period after the death of Whitey's son, when Whitey's enterprise expanded and he became the crime lord of Boston. Flemmy agrees, and he began the story in 1981 when they were making a lot of money, and the FBI let that happen. On a trip to Miami, 2 new members were added to their gang, John Callahan, the president of the company called GLI, and Brian, the impulsive. Although many years had passed, Whitey didn't provide any valuable information to the FBI regarding the Italian mafia. One day, pressurized by his seniors, Connolly meets Whitey and asks him to provide him with any information that must prove Angiulo's crimes, as the FBI can't just keep protecting him. In response, Whitey demands the elimination of Angiulo's gang from Boston and then agrees to help the FBI. The very next day, Connolly finds a file in his car with the Italian mafia's next secret meeting location. He immediately tells other officers about the information he just got and then brags about his decision to ally with Whitey. Later, John Callahan tells Whitey that his company's chairman Roger Wheeler is behind him and will soon learn about his corruption as he checks the company's account books. Whitey and Callahan eventually plan to murder Wheeler to continue making money from GLI, and then Whitey gives Brian a bag of $20,000 to stay away from this matter. He orders Brian to forget everything that was just discussed in front of him regarding the murder of Wheeler and then asks him to leave because he doesn't trust him. Brian becomes emotional and leaves, taking the bag. One day, when Roger Wheeler sits in his car, Martirano shows up with a pistol in his hands. He confirms if he is Roger Wheeler, and Wheeler replies in affirmation. Martirano shoots him in his car, instantly killing him, and the news reaches the FBI, who had prohibited Whitey not to be involved in drugs and murders. Morris discusses this situation with Connolly, who tells him to conceal everything. Connolly suggests Morris keep protecting Whitey for the greater cause. On the other hand, when Brain comes to know about Wheeler's murder, he rushes to the FBI office and snitches everything he knows. He tells them as a witness that it was Whitey and Callahan's plan to murder Wheeler to continue earning profit from World GLI. However, Connolly, who still wants to protect Whitey, disregards Brian's comments, calling him a drunk man. The next day, Connolly meets Whitey, asking him about Wheeler's murder, and Whitey denies the accusation. From this, Whitey gets the impression that Brian must have snitched to the FBI, so he kills Brian in public. Due to many public witnesses, McGuire yells at Connolly once again, questioning his decision to work with Whitey. Connolly again tells him about the valuable information Whitey can inform them, but the argument between the two escalates. Suddenly, Robert arrives, who has gotten access to Angiulo's secrets through wiretapping. All the FBI members hear Angiulo spilling out his secrets on a phone call, and this proves to be a solid piece of evidence for the FBI against the Italian mafia. The FBI then arrests Angiulo and his gang, which paves Whitey's path to becoming the most powerful criminal in Boston. On the other hand, the FBI got what it wanted. After this, Whitey's gang, along with Connolly, go to Miami to celebrate their success, and there Whitey kills Callahan during a party night as he thinks Callahan is the only person who can get him in trouble. In 1985, Whitey's mother passed away, and he became colder. The only time he becomes happy is when he sets a deal with an IRA, Irish Republican Army member, Joe Cahill, for weapon supply. Whitey promises Joe to provide him with the deadliest weapons. Later, Flemmy tells Whitey about his stepdaughter, Deborah, who is a prostitute. He informed Whitey when he was drunk he might have told her some secrets which she shouldn't have known. To encounter this, Whitey questions Deborah, who had just spent her last night at a police station. Deborah tells him that she didn't tell the police any information regarding Whitey and his involvement in drug trafficking. Whitey, who is not convinced, eventually kills her because of the recent incident that happened when Brian snitched about him to the FBI. Connolly, Morris, and Whitey become more close friends, and they start inviting each other to dinner parties. One night while they are having dinner at Connolly's home, Whitey appreciates the steak's taste that Morris brought and asks him about the recipe. Morris laughs and tells him that it's a family secret, and Whitey insists on revealing the secret ingredient. Morris finally tells him and continues eating while Whitey comments that a person who couldn't keep his family's secret can snitch on a criminal too. Morris looks at Whitey with questionable eyes, and suddenly Whitey bursts into laughter, saying that he was just joking. Then Whitey asks Connolly about his wife being absent, and he tells Whitey that she is sick and resting in her room. Despite Connolly's attempts to stop him, Whitey goes to her room and sees how sick she is. As she opens the door, Whitey invites her for dinner, but she refuses, saying that she has a fever. Whitey inappropriately touches her face, making her uncomfortable, and then leaves. Then, Connolly visits the newly appointed honest district attorney, Fred Wishak, and tries to bribe him. However, he declines and questions Connolly about the crimes Whitey is involved in. He asks him the reason behind Whitey not being behind bars, which leaves Connolly dumbfounded. Connolly discusses this matter with Whitey's brother Billy, who is still the senator, and asks him to talk to Wishak. He tries to convince Billy to persuade Wishak not to investigate Whitey, but Billy refuses to help. On the other hand, McGuire and Robert find out that the information provided to them by Whitey was also provided to them by another unknown informant. In fact, this unknown informant has many other secrets than Whitey can provide to them. Meanwhile, Whitey comes to know through a news channel that the ship with the deadliest weapons he sent for IRA has been captured by the Navy. When Connolly comes to know about that unknown informant, John McIntyre, who is also a member of Whitey's gang, he tells Whitey about him, and he kidnaps McIntyre. Now, Wishak calls Connolly and addresses him about the disappearance of McIntyre, and he hesitantly lies that he doesn't know anything. In the meantime, Whitey confronts McIntyre for snitching everything to the FBI against him. McIntyre, who is tied to a chair, seeks forgiveness, saying that he was caught when Whitey sent him on the ship to supply weapons to IRA. The police pressurized him, and he had no other choice except to tell them everything. However, Whitey doesn't forgive and kills him brutally. Unfortunately, it's too late to kill him as he has already snitched Whitey's all secrets to the FBI, and the new district attorney was already in search of such an opportunity. That means Whitey's bad days have begun. Subsequently, Morris calls some people from a newspaper company and tells them about the FBI's alliance with Whitey. As the news gets printed, Kevin is shocked to learn that Whitey was an informant to the FBI but never told him. However, Whitey tells him that the FBI has betrayed him as he wasn't their informant, but he was doing business. Eventually, due to many witnesses, Agent John Connolly is arrested for hiding every possible piece of information that could prove Whitey's involvement in drug trafficking and murders. Similarly, Whitey's gang members, Flemmy, Martirano, and Kevin, are also taken into custody. However, before the officers could arrest Whitey, he fled from Boston. For giving information against Whitey, Kevin receives a reduced sentence of 5 years, Martirano for 12 years, while Flemmy receives a life sentence in an undisclosed location due to his involvement in 10 murders. Billy is forced to resign as a senator for being in touch with Whitey. Additionally, John Connolly is sentenced to 40 years in prison. On June 22, 2011, after 12 years on the FBI's most wanted list, an anonymous tip led to Whitey's arrest in California, who was then sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 5 years for the deaths of at least 11 people.